is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback, Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball. And this is
ABC's Monday Night Baseball, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's tied. He throws. It is.
Hello and welcome to this week's Past Our Prime podcast. We are in the middle of winter, which in Southern California doesn't have quite the same meaning as it does on the East Coast or wherever it might be cold. My name is Scott Johnston, a longtime sports producer, along with a couple of other guys who were in the control booth for many, many years, Mark Hoffman and Bill Mahoney. You guys miss being in the control booth? I sure do.
Yeah, there was something fun and intimate, and there were different control booths. Like at CBS at one time, there was one where you had to walk all these stairs, and it was this little cubby hole, and then another time was in the middle of the newsroom, and it's a comfort. I just got used to it.
I miss it when things are busy. My mind works really fast, so if things are really busy, my mind can connect in. So I miss days, like there was points with the Seahawks when everything was just players coming up and everyone running around. That was, I could focus. But if you're just sitting around, my mind had a tendency to wander. But I miss the immediacy of that guy's coming up. You got to get him. I miss that. I miss that fire part right there.
Yeah, I miss just the live TV aspect of it. You know, there was no do-overs, no editing. It was like, okay, this is what you've worked all day for. And here it is for everyone to see.
I loved getting screamed at.
Yeah. I just remember that first time, and it might have been you, it could have been Mark, and trying to explain to me that you have an off time, whatever, like 24:33. And I remember thinking, no, what do you mean? Can't we just go past it? No, they cut you off. And I just thought, and so trying to explain to somebody that has never done it, I try to explain it to them. I go, there's a certain point where the show's done. I said, whether you're done doesn't matter. I said, the show's done. They go, what do you mean? What if you had something else to say? I said, well, you're saying it to nobody because there's a commercial going in the background. That was the part that I remembered. I'd watch you guys when I first started, and I just thought it was so spectacular how you could go a whole show with things, anchors yelling or things not working, and at the end of the show, it's always, thank you, and hey, we'll see you again, and then there's a little bit of an out, or maybe you do credits. It was just such a skill. It is a true skill to sit in a booth like you guys did and bring a show in out of everything that goes on in an hour, half hour, 2 hours, and bring it in for a soft landing.
I would always call central control, and if I had a half hour like sports final show, it'd be like confirming the in time, the out time, how long all the breaks were. Because my whole fear would be I'd be in the booth and I'd have 2.5 minutes allotted for the last segment. And then all of a sudden they said, oh, no, you're off at this time. You have 30 seconds. I'm like, what? So.
That did happen.
It did.
At KCAL, I thought this was speaking of control booths, the booth at KCAL was on the...
Oh, my God, you had to walk a mile.
The Paramount studio lot. And, the control booth was literally quarter mile away.
Yeah, three things, steps out the door. Yeah.
And so, a lot of times you're cutting things right up to the second, but you couldn't do that there because you had to then go on like a 4-minute, sometimes a 2-minute sprint, but a 4-minute, and you'd leave well before the commercial break going into sports. But anyway, I do miss it.
Can I tell one dumb story, and you can cut this out? I remember doing a show, and you have to rely on people back in the sports room when you're up top if there's a game going on. And I remember there was a USC, but I think they played Oregon. And so I'm up in the booth. I'm waiting for the game to end. It's an overtime. So USC eventually kicks the field goal to win the game. So I call back and I talked to one of the kids that was interning back there. And I said, give me the play. Just 5 seconds back, give me the play of the kicker kicking the field goal. And he goes, USC? I said, yeah, USC. Yeah, they won the game. I said, yeah, I got that. I said, take it 5 seconds back and just roll it, cue it up, and we'll roll it. He goes, USC. I said, yeah. He goes, they won the game. I said, yeah, I got that. I know they won the game. I said, I need you to just 5 seconds back and cue it up.
This is what I mean about live TV.
Yes,
Because
and I'm in the booth, and the time's going down. And I remember John going, John was like, he looked at me like, is
John
it
Ireland?
Ireland. He goes, is the game going? Because there was a sound bite. I had to ask this one guy 5 times, and he kept saying, yeah, USC. They won the game. I said, and I'm not really an angry guy. I remember going, God damn it, man. Just get the kick. 5 seconds back and give it to the TOC.
5 seconds before the snap.
Yes,
and
5
go.
seconds before the snap. Just do it.
Yeah.
Oh, you want the game? Oh, my God. I remember after I said, dude. He goes, yeah, USC won. It was a great game. I thought, we did get it on like the last 8 seconds, but he never, in 5 times, and I know I explained it better than I'm explaining it now, he just kept saying, yeah, USC.
Uh-huh. That guy,
We know who it is.
That guy's still working at
He
CBS.
is. He's one of the head guys.
He's head,
now.
yeah, that's what I was about
One
to
of the
say.
head guys now.
So if
Sorry.
we're ever in trouble, we're just going to say, roll it back 5 seconds before the kick.
Yes.
This week on the cover, one of the greatest names in hockey history, Billy.
Rogie Vachon, man.
Wow.
Yeah, goalie, man.
You just know right away who you're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Can't wait to talk with the Hall of Fame goaltender in just a bit. But before we do, let's get an update on what's going on with you guys. Mark, lost your house last month in the fires. Not to make any jokes of it, but got some good news.
I did. It's so weird. So basically, the fire happens on January 7th, and house burns down, and we can't find our cat, and we're thinking the worst. And then we weren't allowed to even go to the house till 20 days later. So think about that, 20 days later. So January 7th to January 27th or something. So we go there on a Monday, and I call for Fluffy, our cat, no response, not surprised. But we had a pet rescue company, and they put a camera in the backyard. And Tuesday morning at 7 a.m., they get a video of Fluffy looking for her food, walking in the backyard. So I go, oh, my God, she's alive. So Tuesday afternoon, I go there hoping she's going to come back at night. And I'm waiting, and it's getting dark, pretty dark, and I'm thinking, she's not coming. So I'm just about ready to leave when all of a sudden I hear a meow, meow, and there she comes walking up. And so I had a carrier with me, and I tried to get her in, and she escapes the carrier the first time, and I think, oh, crap, now I'm never going to get her. But I petted her some more, and I think she realized who I was and it was safety, and she got into the carrier the second time. And I was able to take her to a vet. They kept her overnight, and now she's back at the house eating again. But she survived 21 days in the wild, in a fire ravage. God knows what she ate or drank. But besides some weight loss that she did have, she looks pretty good. So
That's great.
It's like a miracle story.
My daughter was so happy.
Yeah.
She was so happy. She goes, how did the cat survive? I said, cats just have a survival instinct.
Well,
she was so happy for you.
She's a feral cat. My father-in-law brought him down, her and 2 other cats from Idaho, and she liked being outside, and she liked to hunt. So even though we tried to keep her inside, half the time she'd be outside all night. And because she was used to living outside, that's why she survived. If she'd been a house cat, there's no way she could have gone 21 days. Yeah. But hey, that's the miracle.
ending.
That's the beauty. Cats. I said something like cats have 9 lives, but I think that's an underestimate.
Yeah.
That's the best story I had all week. Yeah.
And then since we last recorded a show, there was another fire. And Bill, you were, the same day Mark's town went up in blaze, Pasadena went up, and Bill, you just couldn't be left out, could you?
Yeah. I said, you better start one here, and they did. The Lake Hughes fire, we evacuated for 1 day, which was great. It could have been worse. The fire was all around or coming toward us, and the firemen and the forestry service was able to get a hold of it. It was absolutely amazing what they did, but you don't realize when you take a daughter and she's 6 years old, she doesn't understand. So it did affect her. We took her to a friend's house, took her to a hotel, had fun, but a few days later, she wasn't eating. She was sort of sad, and finally she goes, I'm having bad dreams about fires. So you don't realize how it affects a little kid. Now she's back to normal, but it was scary. I mean, scary looking over, and you're looking over someone's house, and there's a huge black plume of smoke. So yeah, we got back. We got back the next day, so we feel very fortunate.
Yeah, my daughter's 20, and she was affected by it.
Yeah.
Because remember, that's the only house she's ever lived in.
That's right.
So it's pretty traumatic. And
Yep.
she was hoping we could be back in within a year, and I'm like, no. I mean, it's going to take 2-3 years before.
Yeah.
If we're fortunate to even get back there.
That's right.
All right, let's get started with the magazine, shall we? Scorecard, as per usual. Mark, what do you got?
Well, I thought this was really interesting. It was a guy just speculating about, what if the IRS ran a football league? Because they did confiscate equipment from the World Football League, which had money issues. So they thought this would be so neat if there'd be a new professional league that was run by the IRS, and the names would just be so easy to come up with. Like you'd have the Tampa Tax Shelters, the Washington Withholders, the Denver Deductions, the Wilmington Write-Offs, Rochester Refunds. So there's probably a lot of good names you could come up with.
I have one.
Okay.
The Auburn Auditors.
There you go.
Hey, come on.
Nice. I'll say the Washington Withholders is better than the Commanders.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Good.
Oh, they said it, Billy.
Bum Phillips, he's a Houston Oiler head coach. He asked if he played college football. He goes, I thought I did until I looked at some old game films.
OA Bum Phillips was always good with a
Yeah,
quip.
he was,
always
man.
good with a quip. I was thinking of him the other day when Sean McDermott lost to the Chiefs again. And Bum had that great quote about losing to the Steelers every year, and it was something to the effect of, this year we knocked on the door, next year, last year we knocked on the door, this year we kicked on the door, next year we're gonna bust the damn door down, or something like that. And I was like, man, those poor Bills fans.
Well, the Bills had to not only deal with the Chiefs, but the referees. Some of those calls, like the fourth down where they didn't give the spot to Kelly, where the first official came in and
he
spotted
was
it
there.
correctly
Yeah,
for
yeah,
first
he
down,
did.
and the other official runs it back like a half a yard backwards. It's just
I thought they got the first down on the third down.
right,
play.
right, because the ref thought his knee had hit the ground, but it didn't. And don't they have replay? Isn't that the point of
Is that the
replay?
point of replay? Yeah.
Right. So I just think we could do conspiracy theories here.
Really, the thing is, the Chiefs escaped about 5 or 6 games this year,
Yeah.
just miraculously,
Yes.
They did.
right? The
Broncos.
blocked a Broncos
Yeah,
field
punt,
goal.
yeah,
Well, yeah.
Aiden O'Connell fumbles a ball
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
a snap, which
Yep.
they would have had a field goal to win the game.
Didn't that field goal?
They
Did they try
go
a
to
field goal to hit
overtime
the?
against the Panthers?
Yep.
Yeah,
Hit the upright?
Chargers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Upright. It's like 4 games like that, and it just goes to show you they lose a couple of those. That game's played in Buffalo.
That
Yep.
is a big
And
difference.
huge difference.
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
it is.
Humongous difference.
Yep.
So, another they said it. Mark.
George Blanda, and I remember George Blanda when I first started playing football. He was the backup Raiders quarterback, but he was also their place kicker, the old straight leg place kicker kind of guy. And he was like in his late 40s, which was like, guy, he's still playing in his late 40s. Anyway, so they were asking him on the changes he's seen in his 26 years in the pros. And he said, I haven't noticed many. I mean, the players are faster, bigger, smarter, and more disloyal to owners. That's about it. That sums it up.
Yeah, great line, great line. But I love how they set it up. Sports Illustrated wrote George Blanda, Oakland's superannuated place kicker. So I'm like, what the hell does
that
superannuated
mean?
mean? So I looked it up, and it's apparently describing us. It means obsolete through age or new technological or intellectual development.
There you go.
Now, I think Past Our Prime sounds better than the superannuated
Yeah,
podcast,
yeah.
but it works.
Think about it.
It
He's like
works.
48 years old, obsolete. He's straight leg kicking when you're starting to get the
Yeah.
soccer style kickers
Yeah.
in the league, obsolete,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
It's like he's from a different era, but he kept playing.
All right, now not very often do we start right off with the
got
big
to.
thing.
Yeah.
Okay, but we
Let's
got to
go
just
with it.
jump right in.
Yes.
Bidding with a kick. And we're talking bridge. Okay?
And we're talking something that shouldn't happen.
This
I
is a
kid you
bridge
not.
too far to cross.
Right.
Yes. Thank you, Mark.
I can recall the old argument that golf isn't a sport. Okay? I disagree, but whatever. And I remember this crazy man that would call the station all the time. And whenever we showed golf and be like, golf's not a sport. And I mean, he called about other things too. He called basically every day. But we have bridge card games, and bridge is definitely not a sport.
Oh, man. I wish people could see the picture on the
Yes,
second page.
yes.
Because there's 5 guys at the table, none of them you could say are very athletic looking.
No.
In fact, you could say the opposite.
Yeah.
You know, there's an old guy and he's got
I'm
the
guessing
pants all the
most
way
of
up to
them
his.
didn't see 1980.
Yeah, yeah. But no, there's an old. There's an
They
old.
took the bridge home.
Yeah. There's an old guy and he's got his pants all the way up to like the middle of his abdomen and the guts hanging out. In fact, everyone has a gut in this. You know, and then the
And this
drapes.
is back when people weren't fat.
Yeah.
Exactly. These guys were the
But Bill,
yeah.
And the drapes. Oof.
this was a travesty.
Yeah, you know, because I think 2 of the players from Italy were playing footsie, and they even said, if someone steps on your foot, what do you normally do? Move your foot. They weren't moving their foot, so there was a whole bunch of hubbub.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna try to walk you guys through this, and I know this is gonna get you guys all fired up because this is what happened at the end. I'm gonna announce some of the names too.
Already pretty
Yeah.
riled.
I am.
Okay, now near the end of the match, Italy's ahead. Benito Garrazzo bid a grand slam with cards on which the other U.S. team had bid and made 6 no trump, and that's no joke. George Belladonna was playing the hand, and when he saw the dummy, he gagged visibly. It's true. It contained the ace-queen of trumps doubleton, and he himself was missing 5 trumps, including the king.
Are you serious?
I'm not joking. To make the contract, he needed to find the king doubleton of trumps to his left, which is where it was. Had the king been to his right, or had it been a tripleton, the swing would have been 29 IMPs, enough to give the U.S. the world championship by 3 in the bridge battle championship. It didn't happen. Italy won.
So you're telling me Trump and Dumbledore were
Yes.
playing bridge?
Yes, and they brought up tripleton. Yeah,
You lost me when you said, "Let me explain what happened."
Yes. Mark, when I read that, I just couldn't take it. I knew you guys would be fired up.
We need
Jeremy
to take-
won't even look at us.
We need to take a break.
Yes, please.
Regroup.
This shit's ending now.
Oh, man.
There we go. See, we made bridge exciting there.
We did.
Got fired up.
I would watch that.
Yeah.
I would watch the movie Bridge on the River Kwai
But I'm
before
saying,
I'd watch
there's
a bridge
someone that
match.
knows exactly what I just said there.
Oh, yeah.
There's someone like,
Yeah.
you don't play a 6 trump doubleton. What is he doing? I looked at it and thought, that made no sense to me.
When I turn 80, maybe I'll get into bridge,
Yes.
and then I'll.
Well, that's next week.
No, that was last week.
I see cards in your pocket. Or at least I hope it's cards.
Bailly runs by his own rules. A story on Tanzanian track star Filbert Bailly. And Bill, you have a lot to say about this, so go right ahead.
I do. This was a guy that liked to run in front. He liked to be a front runner because what he would do is he'd get way ahead of everybody. I think I've got something in here where he basically did 1 mile or the course second quarter in 52 seconds.
Right.
52 seconds. But he was also a guy that listened to other people, and that in a lot of ways came to hurt him. He ran into trouble at one of the events when he was jostled, elbowed, and spiked in a 1,500-meter run. That's because he went against what he knew he should do. And then in Europe, he took the advice of Swedish journalists. Do we ever listen to journalists when it comes to anything?
from
No.
Sweden.
Only when it's bridge.
Thank you. But he opted to run with the other competitors. He was spiked, and his European tour was finished for the season. So this guy obviously set some records.
There
too.
was one race where he was murdered.
Yes, he was, and he still finished.
He was a great middle distance
Yeah.
runner. He set world records in the 1,500 meters and the mile, and apparently he did that from leading the pack.
Yes, and now remember, we were talking about this. He's on in a lot of these magazines.
Yeah.
You may eventually see him on our show.
Oh, that would be great.
So
Yeah, and apparently later in life he set up a foundation to help young athletes in Tanzania. But I mean, growing up as a kid, apparently he would chase his dog who was chasing gazelles on Mount Kilimanjaro.
no one does. I mean, honestly,
I gotta get to the top there.
Basically the Jungle Book.
Yes.
Right, and he would have to run 8 miles to get to school every day, and he would run to school. So
isn't that
that
what
would get you in really good
That's
shape.
what my father used to say to me every day. When I was growing up, I had to walk 8 miles to school with no shoes on glass. And I'd be like, that kid actually
And you'd
did
be
it.
like,
Yeah.
Filbert!
Dad,
I love you!
Oh man, you definitely know he had no heart disease in his family.
No. Waifs who dare to darken doors. Have no idea what the hell that means, but they're talking L.A. Kings hockey, and when that happens, Bill's radar goes up. A bunch of castoffs are skating pretty well in L.A., And the Kings are atop their division thanks in large part to their defense and their goaltender, the guy on the cover of this week's issue, Rogie Vachon. What a name, huh?
Yeah, and you could not, and we'll go the story in a sec. Rogie Vachon was the greatest addition, I think, in the first half of the Kings organization. When he came in, he changed the way the people looked at the Kings. Before it was just this team with 65 points, gives a heck about them. Rogie came in and changed everything. The rubber he faced, the leadership he gave, the guy was absolutely amazing.
Well, get this. Montreal, which is the team he played for prior, had and won 3 Stanley Cups with them, hadn't lost during a 21-game stretch. This is back when Montreal was hockey.
Yes.
But Los Angeles just hung tough, and now the two teams are meeting at the Forum in Inglewood, not the Forum in Montreal. And $9 tickets are being scalped for $130 in what was being called the biggest hockey game in Southern California history. So, and they were doing it on the strength of defense and Rogie's goaltending play, and that had people finally taking notice of hockey in Southern California.
Yeah, and for a kid like me that grew up, I grew up and Rogie was my guy, and you followed them because of that. Yeah, there was guys that came in the Richards and the Bobby Orrs that you knew about, but no one grabbed the hearts of the fans like Rogie Vachon. And I even started mentioning names to you of other players on the Kings, and what did you say?
I said, that's all well and fine, but I've never heard of them, but I've heard of Rogie Vachon.
Yep. Rogie Vachon was just, I mean, I think during the interview, I remember thinking, man, all I remember my whole life was Bob Miller just going, save Vachon! Rebound, save Vachon! He was just, and he had that hair, he was really just one of the greatest players ever to wear a Kings jersey.
Vachon sounds like a hockey name.
It does, doesn't it?
Isn't that great?
It does.
He got traded away from the Canadiens to the Kings. Earlier in the season, defenseman Bob Murdoch scored a goal against his former team and teammate, the Canadiens' Ken Dryan, and then he mailed him the puck as a Christmas present. So this team had some panache, some character. And this is right, I know you had followed the Kings prior to then, Billy, but as a young kid, you had to be excited that they were finally relevant.
Yeah, 105 points that year. The Kings have never had more than 105 points in all of their years and all of their great players. My gosh. And the thing is, usually when you listen to the Kings, you knew a few things were going to happen. They most likely were going to lose or tie, and they were going to give up a lot of goals. So all of a sudden we had a guy in there, and the team acquired players that for whatever reason were upset at their old organizations and gelled perfectly at that time to form a really solid defensive group. And then you have Rogie back there shutting the door if anything got through.
Buffalo, Montreal, and Philly each finished the season with 113 points, and LA was fourth with 105, the most points in Kings history. Yeah. That's saying something.
It is.
Mustachioed Vachon, part of 3 Stanley Cup championship teams in 68 when he won the Vezina Trophy for being the game's top goaltender, and in 69 and 71 before he was traded to LA and became an all-time fan favorite. And Rogie joins us now from his home in Montana. Mr. Vachon, thank you so much for taking some time out of your golfing schedule to talk with us today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Rogie, you had won 3 Stanley Cups in Montreal, but now in LA, and I imagine back then, everything that could help bring attention to hockey in Southern California helped, and nothing better than being on the cover of Sports Illustrated, right?
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
What was it? How important was it for you guys not just to win, but to get some kind of notoriety, positive notoriety, like being on the cover of a magazine like that here in LA?
Yeah, because what happened, especially in hockey in my days, all the publicity and everything came in from the East Coast, and because of the 3-hour difference, we didn't get a whole lot of publicity in California for that reason.
1975, the Kings were good. You guys were really good. You weren't very flashy, but what was it like to start winning here in Los Angeles that season?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun because before that, when I came in 71, we only had like 6,000 people in the stands. So when Bob Pulford came in as a coach, 74, 75, changed the system, and all of a sudden we started winning. Ugly wins, 1-0, 2-1, but we were winning, and all of a sudden the fans kept coming to the games, and in certain games we were out. We had more fans than the Lakers sometimes. So that was pretty cool.
Tell me, that year you guys finished with 105 points. The Kings, to now, have not equaled that amount. What was it about that team that made it so good that year?
I think everybody was playing together. We were playing a very defensive system, and with that system, the players, especially the forwards, were coming deep in the zone, and we were allowing the defensemen were pretty much wide open. So that was my job to stop them. And then the whole system worked very well.
And you were the one guy on that team. I know there was few that were on teams that played in the Cup, but you won 3. You also won a Vezina. How respected were you in the locker room, and how much more of a leader were you for that team?
Yeah, in Los Angeles, that was pretty much my team. I was playing most of the games, 65, 70 games a year. And that was my team. And when I was not happy with the players, I was breaking my stick on the corner of the dressing room, and they listened most of the time.
I'm looking at the standings right now from that 1974-75 season, and can you explain to me, because it doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm looking at the North Division, and you're on the West Coast in Los Angeles, but you're playing in a division with Montreal, Pittsburgh, Detroit, and Washington. That it's like, what? It doesn't make any sense. Yeah,
no, you're right. It really did make sense. And obviously these days we're traveling commercial. And then we had to play Montreal in the same division. But we wound up on 106 points, I think, and then Montreal at, 113 or something. So we gave him a good ride, for first place, but they were very strong.
For someone that has never played hockey, can you explain the mindset of what it takes to be a successful goalie?
You have to be very strong mentally. Obviously, physically, you got to be able to do your job. But I think the difference is probably mentally. Top players are, they have it. They just, they don't take no for an answer. They just go.
I mean, a hard disc at that speed. I mean, I felt the hockey puck. That thing is hard. And coming at the speed at you, I don't care how much padding you have on you, that has got to hurt.
Yeah, and especially in my days, we were not very well protected. No, you can't get hurt by being a goalie now because you can absorb the puck and you still will protect it. But I first started in the league without a mask, so tell you how stupid we were.
Rogie, I think I see a couple bruises still.
Yeah, there's a few, yeah. But they disappear with age.
Hey, let's go back a bit, shall we, and talk about you playing hockey as a child, which was a rite of passage for any Canadian kid. Barely a teenager, and you are playing in the men's league as their goalie. What was that like? You're like 13 years old.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. I was born on a farm, a dairy farm, and the coach would come in and pick me up. And we had a league, playing all the other villages around, and nobody wanted to play goal. Everybody wanted to play forward because, especially outside, it's very, very cold in the winter. So anyway, I got permission from my mother to go out and play with the big guys, and it turned out pretty good.
Now, I'm told that for some of these games, after the game, like I said, you're playing with men and you're just a child. So they're going off and maybe having a beer or two while you're kicking back doing what?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was the key. Especially on the road, after the game, the guys would say, okay, we're going to stop for one because everybody's thirsty right now, and we'll be out in half an hour. So that didn't happen. I was sitting in the car because I didn't want to go inside in the tavern. So sometimes 2 or 3 hours later, my ride came in and brought me home at 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I had to get up at 5 to go and milk the cows.
And you have 7 siblings, right? You had 7 siblings you grew up with?
Yeah, I was one of 8, yeah, right in the middle.
So what was that like growing up? I mean, did that help you in a sense? You had to be tough to deal with so many siblings, help you to become the great hockey player you became?
Oh, yeah. My brothers were playing hockey and the cousins, so we used to build a little rink in the back using all the water from the cows. My mother was not very happy, and then we had some good games all the time.
And then obviously you grow up, and right around 21 years old, you're sitting in Montreal playing goalie for one of the greatest franchises ever. What was it like to put on that Montreal Canadiens sweater?
When you put that sweater, you're so proud, because when you grow up, you always think about Montreal Canadiens, and that would be nice to play for them, and all of a sudden you wind up playing with John Billabo and Henri Richard and all these top guys. So it was a wonderful experience.
And then all of a sudden, a few years later, they trade you to the Kings. What was your reaction when they told you that you were headed to LA?
Well, actually, I asked to be traded because in 1971, Ken Dryden came in, and he came out of college and he won the Stanley Cup in '71. He was the MVP of the playoff. So I could have stayed at number 2 goalie in Montreal. But in the summer, I went to see the manager and I asked to be traded. I said, I want to be number 1 somewhere. I don't care where. So I wound up in Los Angeles.
And that's tough, Rogie, because like we said, you win 3 Stanley Cups with Montreal. You're at the top of your profession on this great, great team, and you asked to be traded, and your luck changed in that regard. You never won a cup again after that. Tell me about winning in Montreal. What was the first one like for you?
Well, obviously the first cup is major, but also the second cup is good as well, and the third cup as well too. So
keep them coming.
You don't get tired of it. Yeah, that was pretty cool. 3 Stanley Cup in 4 years, so I had a good time.
So what was it like when you first come to Los Angeles? Because the Seals have already moved. There's really no West Coast presence in the NHL. I mean, it's like Los Angeles is this isolated city in the NHL.
Yeah, it was a culture shock, especially coming in LA. We had 4,000 or 5,000 people at the games, and our team sucks way back. So especially coming in 71, 72. The first year I got there, I got hurt and missed most of the season. But then gradually we got a little better, and the fans were coming in, and so I had a great time in LA. I really enjoyed it.
We are talking with Hall of Fame goaltender Rogie Vachon. And Rogie, you just mentioned the fans here in LA. You didn't have a lot of them. They weren't coming out in droves, but you had a bunch of loyal ones, and they certainly loved you. There was something about the connection that you had with the fans. What was it that bonded you with those loyal King fans?
Yeah, that was pretty cool. It's probably because of my style. I was I was a stand-up goalie, but I used to move a lot, and I had a great catching glove, and I was making some spectacular saves that they call. So I think all of a sudden the fans they love that type of style.
You know, in all the sports I've covered, hockey players seem to be the most accessible, the nicest people. I remember as a young teen, actually after a Kings game, going to the Forum Club afterwards and meeting you there. Were hockey players. You didn't have the snobbish attitude. You felt like a connection with the fans, and you were on the same level of the fans. Is that a true statement?
Yeah. I think the majority of the hockey players, even nowadays, they're very polite. A lot of them coming from the farms, and they were raised properly, and then they respect the fans, and they respect everything.
And they actually, just obviously being one of those diehard Kings fans growing up, loved you to death. But I also enjoyed back in February of 1985, you're the first ever LA King player to have his jersey retired. Tell me about that day and the experience and how you felt.
Oh yeah, this is something you never forget. My parents were there in LA, came in from the Rouen, and then we had pretty much a full crowd at the Forum that night. And then this is something that you never forget. Every time I look at my jersey in the living room here, it makes you proud, being the first ones.
I think they need a statue of you out there too, man.
You know what
it would be a small statue.
Good, they can make it cheap. That's
exactly. Yeah, now you're talking.
You know what I miss is those all yellow jerseys the Kings used to wear, because it was so distinctive and stuff like that. But so you were not only just a great player with the Kings, but then you become the general manager of the Kings. And you are there probably on one of the greatest moments in hockey history, Wayne Gretzky coming to Los Angeles. Can you explain how that whole thing came about in that crazy day in 1988?
Yeah, that was something you never forget. We've been working on this for quite a long time. Actually, it started with Jerry Buss. One year, I was trying to get Wayne in Los Angeles. We almost made it, but then the owner, Edmonton owner, had cold feet, so he decided not to do it. Well, when Bruce McNall took over the team, he started pursuing the same deal, and finally we have it done, before the draft. So it was really something, with the press conference. And I remember that same day that Wayne came in and signed, all the tickets were gone in hours at the Forum. It was totally gone, just in a few hours.
I mean, you totally changed the franchise. The purple and gold were gone. It went to black and silver when Gretzky came in. There was this whole image remake, and it made hockey so much popular in Southern California.
Yeah, and Wayne, obviously, when he came in, made it even more popular, because we didn't realize how big he was going to be in the States. He was, he's like God in Canada. But when he came in the States, pretty much when we were on the road, we were filling all the buildings just because of Wayne.
Now hockey is on the map, not only here in LA, but soon in San Jose and Phoenix and Anaheim and now Seattle and Vegas. You knew Wayne would have a huge impact on the Kings. Did you know the impact he would have on the growth of the entire NHL?
Oh, no, because all of a sudden Anaheim came in right after. So that was something special. I mean, two teams in Southern California. But then all of a sudden, they opened the gate to all the other teams, San Jose and everybody else. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, following up on Gretzky, toward the end of your career, you got to play against him. What was it like to be a goalie with Gretzky on the ice, and what kind of player did you see when you saw Gretzky?
Oh, when he came in the league?
Yes, when he came in the NHL after the draft with the WHA when they absorbed the teams.
Well, luckily I didn't play a whole lot against Wayne. So because I retired in '81, I think he came in what, '79 in the league.
He came in the league in his first year with Edmonton was 79-80.
Yeah. So I played 1 year against him, so that was enough.
Was he as magical on the ice from being on the ice or standing and watching him as it is for people like me on TV that watched his career for many years?
Yeah, you never get tired of watching him. He's just so smart. Looking, you don't think you see somebody, and all of a sudden the puck is right on their stick. So he's gonna go down as the best player ever. That's for sure.
Yeah, he's about to have his all-time goals record passed pretty soon. But when you look at Ovechkin, you look at it and you go, "That's a hockey player." When you look at Gretzky, that's not the first thing that comes to mind. He was just such a graceful and gosh, I hate to say it, but beautiful player on skates. What made him so different?
I think mentally, he was absolutely fantastic. And the skill that he has, seeing players that nobody else will pick up. He was quick. He had a good shot. He was playing with a good team, but he is total different style than Ovechkin.
So when you bring Gretzky in, Bruce McNall is the owner, and for people that love him or hate him, I mean, he did transform sort of hockey in Los Angeles. What kind of an owner was he? What was it like working with McNall?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. We were traveling a private jet all the time on the road and having the finest wine in the restaurant. And he was a nice guy, really. I think his downfall actually was, personally, I think when he made that trade for Wayne, he had to put up $15 million to the other owner. And then all of a sudden, getting a private jet for the team and, start spending so much money because Wayne was in LA. And then after a while, it was too much. He just couldn't afford it.
Rogie, we mentioned you didn't win a cup as a player in LA or as a GM, but in 2012 and 2014, the Kings win 2 Stanley Cups. How happy were you to see them and their fans raise those cups those 2 years?
Yeah, I was saying, well, finally we have, after 50 years, we have a Stanley Cup in Los Angeles. I was very proud of the boys, yes. I even got a ring, too, on 2012, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, the only thing I felt was missing, I wish they had worn the purple and gold jerseys. I mean, that's what, I mean, you wore those jerseys, you'd be proud.
The old yellow and the yellow pants.
God, that was great. I love that. In your career, looking back, so we talk a little about Gretzky, but we'll go back more to your era. Who was some of the tougher players that you played against?
Yeah, we obviously Bobby Orr and Gordie Howe and all these tough guys. They could shoot the puck, and they were very, 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 very good.
And I also made the mistake of saying, what was it like playing with Marcel Dion? He was just phenomenal when I was growing up.
Oh yeah, he's very. This guy was very, very strong, especially around the net. You gave him the puck in front of the net, and the puck is in. I was very happy playing with him. We had some good years together.
Yeah, he wasn't the biggest guy, but man, he could light the lamp like no one else.
yeah, but he was strong. You know, he was much stronger than everybody gave him credit for. So, but he could put the puck in the net.
So, can you explain the difference when you were a player? Obviously, there's pressures involved, and then when you're a general manager, there's obviously pressures involved. Did playing help you as a GM, or did it give you any insight to help you be a better GM?
Yeah, well, I learned on the job because I had no experience when when Dr. Buss hired me. So you know, every year you get better, you get better at it. And in those days, we were pretty much doing everything. You know, signing players and making the trades and hiring the coaches. And now a GM has a lot of help. He's got attorneys working with him, and so a little different. But you know, I really enjoyed it. I was there for 8 years.
So we do a segment here on the show called 50-50. It's a trivia segment, okay? You get a 50% chance of getting it right. It's a true or false question. So keeping a hockey theme, actor Steve Carell from The Office and movie fame, 40-Year-Old Virgin and stuff, my trivia question to you, like you, he was a college hockey goalie. True or false?
Who's that?
Steve Carell, the actor, who's been in, you know, The Office, who's been in The 40-Year-Old Virgin, who's been in tons of movies.
False.
No, true. He was the college goalie on the Denison, Ohio hockey team. So like you, he was a hockey goalie, and he made a success of himself.
Unlike you, he was no good.
That's right. That's right.
I don't know. Maybe we should ask him.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
He's no Rogie, man.
I had one other quick question for you. So apparently you had the nickname of Bono when you played hockey. Can you explain how that all came about?
I guess because of my mustache, they say I was looking like a Bono, you know, because of the mustache, and the name stuck there for a while anyway. So
yeah, you just didn't have Cher on your hip.
Right,
that's
right.
all.
yeah,
He didn't do badly.
no, it didn't.
You know,
and Nicole.
We mentioned that you were the first Kings player to have your number retired, and what a thrill that was for you. 30 years later, you get inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. What was that like for you?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember the call. I was at home with my son, Nick, and then I got a call from, pick up the phone, and I said, who's this? He says, Lenny McDonald. So I said, oh, how you doing, Lenny? How are you? He said, well, he said, you're in. So I was confused, and I said, well, I'm in what? He says, you're in the Hall of Fame. So I said, oh, my God, I almost fainted. Okay, for 30 years, I didn't think it was going to happen, but it did.
Wonderful, wonderful. Hey, you know, Rogie, I don't know if you miss Los Angeles, but I can tell you that Los Angeles sure misses you. So want to thank you so much for giving us a half hour of your time today. The one and only Rogie Vachon. I mean, when you think L.A. Kings hockey, he is right up there with the best of them.
Yeah, Rogie, there'd be no L.A. Kings hockey without someone like you. Yeah. There would not be.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it. Take care, guys.
Rogie Vachon, everybody. One of the all-time Kings greats. One of the all-time greats ever.
He was the Kings.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got Dion a year or so after. He was the Kings.
No question.
You could say, you know, there were guys, the Gene Carrs, Vic Van Aske, Sheldon Cannageezers, Don Kozak, Butch Goring. They were good players that way.
I'm going to, as a Kings fan, yes, Billy, but yeah. I wasn't.
That's right. That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
I don't know who any of those guys are.
Exactly.
I know who Rogie Vachon is.
That's all. That's
right?
That
so
says
there's your point right there.
Yeah, it says it all.
Rogie Vachon, one of the best. All right, let's talk a little tennis, shall we? A two-armed bandit hits the jackpot. Jimmy Connors and Rod Laver meet up for the first time ever in a nationally televised winner-take-all $100,000 match from Vegas. and the young brass Connors wins it in 4 sets over Laver. And just like basically everyone with Connors at this time, these two didn't like each other.
First time they've ever met, too.
That's right.
Both left-handers too, so it was just they. But Connors didn't like anybody.
No.
It wasn't like you thought. Well, Jimmy likes these other. He didn't like anybody.
Yeah.
So Rod Laver was just in that crowd, and I've always thought, looking at talking about that match, or maybe not the match, what Connors could have been. How many guys have we heard about? Bill Walton the other day. George Foreman, that maybe they were a little rugged when they were younger, but they turned it around. Jimmy Connors is the one guy that's never done that.
Right.
You don't see Jimmy Connors, hawking, hamburgers or grocery stores. He really is who he is.
Yeah. Yep.
To me, what got to me is like winner take all, 100,000.
But in that time,
yeah, it was a lot of money.
time.
Like money now it'd be like winner take all, what, $2-3 million. But it wasn't just the 100,000. He also got a new Buick car, and there was some other stuff involved. So he actually took home more like 150,000.
Right. The match was set up because of a quote by Laver in a Sports Illustrated article in March of '74, where the Australian said of Jimmy, probably thinks he's the next best thing to 7-Up. Now, I don't know about you, but them's fighting words as far as
Back off.
Right? He didn't say
don't be-
Fresca.
Mark, you back it off.
Right? Next
Don't
best
be
thing to
insulting my
Fresca.
7-Up.
Yes, and now it's not 7-Up,
Squirt.
Dr. Pepper. Now.
What about
Yeah.
Squirt,
Yes. God, I love Squirt.
Laver was, as we like to say on this show, past his prime. At age 36, he had to get in tennis shape to play the top-ranked player in the world. The two had hostility towards each other leading up to the match, but that was, as we said, consistent with about everyone that Connors faced back then. After the match, Laver was asked if he would take a rematch. I'd give it some thought, but I'd like to be maybe a year younger. So it was a good match. Laver played well, but back then nobody was beating Connors.
No, but I was looking over their history stats. Connors won 8 titles. Laver won 11 singles titles. But when you think of Jimmy Connors, you think he's one of the greatest players ever because of the fact he played 28 years as well. But it's a hard comparison because Rod Laver in his era was great, and he still is considered one of the greatest. But when you put him up against Connors, it's easy to think Connors was better. He was that day, but he did have 14 years on him as well.
And still a classic of cool. The New York Knicks have won 2 NBA championships, and Walt Frazier was on both of them. The Garb is a great collegiate player, is now in his 8th season as an NBA player and star. And this is like the perfect headline, being this classic cool.
Yeah.
Because even Walt Frazier's 79 now, and he will never lose that persona of just being the New York. I can still see him in the fedora with the mink coat, and he just played up that era perfectly.
Yeah, it was nicknamed Clyde. He was just so smooth and just, he was probably the Knick player that I identified with the most.
I think everyone did, though, because he transcended basketball that wasn't that popular back in those days.
Now, he played most of his career with the Knicks. Do you know who he ended his career with?
Cavaliers.
That's
That doesn't
right.
make sense because it was done for compensation for them signing Jim Clemens.
Wow, is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea that Clyde he got from wearing a hat that resembled what Warren Beatty wore when he was in the movie Bonnie and Clyde. Had nothing to do with
it didn't.
I mean, just randomly, could have been anyone. So,
And I always said when he said about his taste, he said, I always had exquisite taste. I just didn't have the money. But when he got the money, he brought it. And I won't lie, we tried to get Clyde Frazier because I wanted to talk to him about basketball, but I thought the clothes he wore was really what I wanted to get into him with because that was what he was known for other than his unbelievable basketball talent.
Well, he's driving a Rolls Royce.
Yeah, not bad.
Wears a $5,000 black mink coat. But at age 30, he knows that he'd better start kind of not living the New York life too much anymore, or his playing days are going to be over soon. And in fact, they were. He played a couple more years, and then he was done. But they also compared him not only to, he got his nickname from the Warren Beatty movie, but they compared him to Shaft, which
That's
I
right.
have to imagine that,
Roundtree.
Mark, you enjoyed those movies back in the 70s. And
Oh,
some
yeah.
say...
I remember Shaft so well with Richard Roundtree.
That's right.
And here's some real trivia for you. Do you know there was a TV series Shaft with Richard Roundtree? It aired for one season on CBS 74, 75 season. They toned it down a bit or whatever. But, yeah, Richard Roundtree, Shaft was a television series.
Was there
But
a great
lost, I
song,
think-
too?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Isaac Hayes.
Yeah.
It won the Oscar. But, I mean, Shaft was such an iconic kind of like,
I mean, put it this way: that's 50+ years ago.
right?
I've never seen one.
Yeah.
And yet I know what it is,
Yes,
right? I mean,
yeah.
it was definitely a
Yeah,
part of
yeah.
our culture.
You hear that
Pop
Isaac
culture back
Hayes
then.
song,
Right.
and,
And didn't Samuel L. Jackson, they remade the movie
they
years ago?
remade it with-
Spoof, though, right?
No,
No?
it was
No.
serious,
Yeah, it
and it had
Wasn't violent.
Oh, it was very violent. It had
Right? Yes.
Christian Bale had a supporting role
There
in
you
the
go.
movie. Yeah, Shaft. Shaft brings back some. If you look at it, it's a very kind of low budget kind of film and stuff or whatever. But,
yeah, but the
it was,
cars,
Yeah.
and
Still
the-
trans-
and
it
the-
transcends
and
to
the
nowadays.
wardrobe
Yeah.
and all those.
though it
things.
wasn't my favorite. I mean, they called it the area of the black exploitation films and stuff. My
Yeah.
favorite was Blackula.
That was mine, too.
Yes,
It was
with
mine,
William
too.
Marshall. That
Yes, I
was,
saw
William
that in
Marshall was actually a
Pasadena.
really good actor.
Don't know that one.
Oh yeah,
That was great. It was, that was
Yeah,
a
they
great
portrayed Dracula as a bigot, and he turned this African prince into a vampire.
Yeah.
And that's how backlash.
movie. You missed out, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was
That was-
that?
I saw that with my friend Joey Gutworth. We saw a double bill.
Gutty?
It was Blackula and Frogs. Frogs was
Oh, I
the
like
movie.
Frogs, too.
Yes, that was the
Yeah,
double
another
bill.
good one. Another good one.
So we've taken this show down a notch quite a bit now.
Frogs for
Hey,
But we are
Frogs
talk-
had Sam Elliott in it.
We are talking about things we enjoyed as children. So that's perfect for this next one. Out of the surf and into the skies. Bill?
I'll get quick through this. When I was a kid, my stepfather used to, one day came home and the whole downstairs was filled up with remote control gliders. We had no idea why. And he bought a Hobie cat. He wasn't a big sailor, but he became one. This article is about Hobie Alter, who we know is made Hobie cats and also surfboards. It fixed my childhood because my stepfather was close friends with Hobie Alter. Now I realize why we had a Hobie cat in our yard and we had gliders that he was flying because Hobie Alter flies remote control gliders, actually created them and built them himself. So that's what my stepfather did. He'd go out and fly them right over where the old, it's a bluff then. It was the old Ritz-Carlton. It's a Ritz-Carlton in Laguna Niguel that used to be just a bluff. We used to go out there and fly them. So it just sort of fit that
Connected
little,
the dots.
It did, thank you. Yeah, it's like
You
a
know,
jigsaw
I
puzzle.
was recently at the Ritz-Carlton. I saw your name engraved,
Mark, I've never been in there because when I was
On the
growing
bluffs,
up,
the big,
I've
like,
never been.
beam.
That wasn't engraved. That was do not let in.
Do not let him in, Mark. And that I would, because in those days you didn't have cameras like we do nowadays, but you could. Before that was there, you could just walk out and sit on that bluff and see the ocean of
Vista.
cattle. It was just beautiful,
Yeah. Yeah, that's called prime real estate.
Thank you now.
Someone else was going, get off the bluff, kid.
Yeah, exactly. We're there.
We're about to bulldoze this
Yep,
son of a bitch.
Yep.
Yeah. College hoops. Last week we spoke with Indiana Hoosiers super sub John Laskowski, who was from South Bend, where Notre Dame is. Had a scholarship to play for Notre Dame before first-year head coach Digger Phelps said, no, thanks, but no thanks. Which meant, Bill, he didn't get to play with the guy featured in this week's issue, one of the greatest scorers of all time.
Adrian Dantley. Oh, man, I loved him. Man, Adrian Dantley could score and he could rebound, but I loved him. I always remember his free throw line. He used to take the ball and just like massage it before he shot it. I've never forgotten that. I
4
loved it.
dribbles,
Yeah.
and then kind
Yes.
of
It was
like
a whole routine.
Yes, every time, and it worked. He was a very, very good free throw
Yes.
shooter, and he got to the line all
the time.
And has to be one of the worst trades the Lakers ever made.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Jim Chones?
And I like Jim
I
Jones.
think it was for
might have
Jim
been,
Jones.
Yeah.
Oh,
He
can you
played
imagine-
15 years in the league, 15 years in the NBA, and he was 6 times an All-Star. But yeah, the Lakers regretted. But
Yeah. I think
I remember
averaged,
him with Dallas with the Mavericks. I remember.
well, and of course the Pistons, right? He averaged like 17 points a game for the Lakers his last season when Kareem was the main guy, and then right away with Utah,
He took
became
off
like
at
a
Utah.
30-point
Yeah,
a
he
game
did.
guy.
He did.
And that's really where he became a great NBA
Yes.
player. So yeah,
And a
AD,
Hall of Famer. I
AD.
didn't know that. I mean, I should have known it, but 2013, and he deserved it.
One other college basketball note, Mark. What do you got?
So UCLA beat USC 89-84 It was the 77th straight win at home for the Bruins. Think about that. That's
amazing.
never coming again. Never happening again. Especially in the Big Ten. My God.
Yeah.
You'd be lucky if you win 5 straight games at home.
So true. So true. Do you know what it ended? When it did end, Mark?
Well, I know that season. I think that's the season they lost to Oregon at home by 20 points. I want to say 65-45 because I was at that game. But
Way to go.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, losing at home and losing by 20 points, that was like insane. That's just never heard of.
All right, now this is a crazy story. Mark's second favorite
Yeah.
professional sports team, I think, right? Tigers would be number one, right?
Yes.
Very
and then
close.
the San Antonio Spurs are second. The Dallas Chaparrals were struggling. This is back in the day, less than 2,000 fans a game. So the Dallas GM called Red McCombs and asked him if he was interested in getting an ABA team in San Antonio. McCombs said, no thanks. But Bob Briner, the GM, persisted and kept asking, finally asking McCombs if he could come up with a deal that would make it happen. And Old Red did come up with a plan, Mark. And what was it?
It was like a lend-lease plan,
Right?
Or whatever, right? And I don't know if anyone thought that 50 years later the Spurs would still be in San Antonio. I remember a rumor. So I started off as a Chaparrals fan because of the Cowboys, and had I been born 10 years later, I would have been a Mavericks fan probably. But they had real attendance problems. They were actually the Texas Chaparrals for 1 year, where they just stopped. They toured the state and played at different venues, but. The rumor was, I think, was San Antonio or New Jersey, which would have been really, but they ended up in San Antonio, and I still say to this day the reason that the franchise is still around is because of the Virginia Squires. They were going bankrupt, and they just sold players. I think they got Swin Nader for $100,000, and then they got George Gervin, Hall of Famer George Gervin, for $250,000 from the Virginia Squires. So
yeah, in fact, it looked like the commissioner at the time stepped in and tried to stop the Gervin deal, but I think Virginia had already started spending the money or something like that to pay off debts, and so it was too late. And Nader wins Rookie of the Year, and Gervin becomes the Iceman.
Right, and San Antonio those days. When you think of San Antonio now, I think of Popovich and defense. But San Antonio those days were all offense. And in their early years in the NBA, it was just completely no defense. We'll just try to outscore you.
And when you say lend-lease, let's look into that. They basically said, you can have the team for 3 years. Yeah. And they went to San Antonio, and the key was they went from about 2,000 fans a game, and they started drawing. They got about 8,000 fans a game, which in today's standards sounds horrible, but it was the 4th best attendance for a team in the ABA back then.
Well, everyone says San Antonio is a small market, but I think population-wise it's the 7th biggest city in the United States. Wow. So it's in the top 10. But just San Antonio, I mean, they had the gunslingers, I guess, in the old USFL for a while. But, really, the Spurs are the only game in town. And Bill and I went to a Spurs game.
We did a couple of years ago.
Right. They played at the Hemisphere initially, and then it was the Alamo Dome, which I covered a game at. And then it's now their current home, but now they're talking about building one downtown again, more state-of-the-art one, but we'll see.
But I also like the fact that they didn't have a lot of interest there. So the executive hired 2 college students to lead a raucous group of fans. They used to lead a raucous group of fans at the local minor league games. They brought
the baseline bums.
That's what I was about to say. They brought in, made it grassroots. The baseline bums are still alive. Yep. Nowadays, if you go to Instagram, you can get Spurs baseline bums. But he brought in 2 kids to basically, hey man, get some interest in this team. And that's what small things they did then that they would never do now.
And as a kid, I would follow the Spurs because I could get San Diego Conquistador games on the radio, and they would play the Spurs a lot, so I listened to that. Yeah. And WOI, I think it's WOI or WOIA, which was the flagship station of the Spurs, had such a powerful signal that during the winter at night, so like after 5:30 or whatever, you could sometimes pick up the Spurs signal in Los Angeles and listen to the games, which was pretty crazy.
Yeah, I used to love doing that all through baseball and basketball season, getting games from far away. So first you have to find K2. So where is the second highest mountain in the world? It's in both Pakistan and China, and at 28,251 feet tall. It is less than 800 feet below Everest. Some Americans, including Jim Whittaker, are training at Mount Rainier in Washington to get ready to ascend on K2. Whittaker was the first American to climb Everest in '63. Now he set his sights on another Himalayan mountain. Here's an interesting thing from the article. Because of the mountain being so remote and difficult to get to, it was basically never given a name. Until the mid-1800s when it was measured and someone just assigned the geographical destination, K2.
Such a great
Hence,
name.
that's the name.
That's a
and it's
great
just,
name.
it's like, it's almost like the tough brother of Mount Everest, you know? So just a great name. And Billy, you did a little digging on this.
Oh my! Just if there's a if you're interested in seeing a movie, it's called The Last Mountain. It's talking about the son of Allison Hargraves, who was the one person that nearly climbed all 6 peaks in the Alps, and she died on K2. She died coming down from K2. There was 100-mile-an-hour winds, and it blew her off the mountain. Her and I believe 4 other climbers. And the movie The Last Mountain is about her son, who also became a mountain climber, who also unfortunately passed on a different mountain. But you don't realize the work that goes into it. Allison Hargraves climbed Mount Everest with no oxygen. She had no tanks. She did that. That is, that's beyond human capacity that I thought. But no, it was, if you look up these people that have tried to climb K2, I don't know how they do it or why they do it in a lot of ways.
Right. It's.
I get nervous if I'm 5 feet off the ground, let alone
Yes.
28,000 feet off. I mean, I climbed Mount Whitney in high school, but
Which
Mount
is how tall do you think?
Oh, I have to look it up. But
10,000?
I didn't need oxygen for that.
Right.
Yeah, but
So
it was,
think of that.
draining.
Three times that.
Right.
It's unfathomable.
It is.
You know, we've never seen anything like it.
And never felt anything like that coldness. But they said that in 74, only 7 assaults in the summit over the last 73 years have been made, and only 1 made it to the top. By 2023, 800 have summited K2. 96 people have died. So it's changed, but I mean,
Think of that though. That's over 10%.
They leave, like in Everest, you can't take these bodies down. So I'm sure K2's the same. Never saying I'm going to know about that, but you would probably have to pass
They'd be
over
frozen.
bodies. Yeah.
Right, and they'd be preserved because the ice would preserve them. There's this story of a sailor from the 1800s that was discovered in ice, and he was perfectly preserved, modified. But at the same time that this was happening, the Eiger sanction came out with Clint Eastwood.
I love that movie.
With him climbing the Eiger, was as a hitman to, take someone out. But he actually Clint did his own climbing.
I'm sure he did. But I want just one last thing. There's a guy, his name's Pete Schoening, and I believe it. I don't want to say it was K2. It was another. I think it might have been K2. Like the Eiger sanction. Remember at the end, Mark, when the guys slip off the mountain?
Right.
5 of the guys went off the mountain, and the one Peter Schoening held them all as he was able to get his, whatever it is, the picks in there, and the guys were all saved because he had them. It's called the belay. So he was holding on to the guys that were hanging off the mountain. And these guys were climbers, so they were eventually able to get over and get up. But it makes my hands sweat thinking about that.
Yeah.
That there's a man that had so much strength and so much determination that he saved his friends. One guy did pass away that had been sick up there, but you just don't realize what these people go through. That I have no idea how they do it.
Reminds me of the other day I had to step on a chair and
Yes.
get something off
Yes.
of the mirror. And it was pretty harrowing.
Exactly.
You feel like I'm going to fall. I'm going to fall. I'm teetering here.
And then the fan's on. You're going to get blown
And I
off.
didn't have an oxygen tank.
Yeah, you did.
I was a good 3-4 feet off the ground.
I always remarked at people like that work on their roofs, and they'll just take a ladder and climb on the roof. And start
Yes.
changing
My
towels. I'm
father-in-law tells me a story of working in New York City, and he's, on like the 6th, 7th floor of a building, right? And they tell you, do not lift any pieces of plywood over your head. Don't do that. Okay. And he looks across the street. There's another building there. And guy lifts a piece of plywood up to move it. And then right at that time, big gust of wind. And just watched him get blown right off the building. So if you're
That's
ever
good advice.
if you're ever on a building high up, don't lift the plywood.
Wow, and think
I
if
don't think you
you
have to
were up
worry
on a
about that.
building like that and you came up with that, people would think you're a genius.
Right.
Hey, everyone, don't lift the plywood up here. They'd go, how do you know? You'll get blown off. And they'd go, you go to Scott, man. That sucker knows everything about buildings.
I don't think you'll have to worry about that ever happening.
Right.
I'm good at changing light bulbs, and that's about it.
How about that picture, that famous picture from the Empire State Building? All the guys on the
sitting
the beam.
No.
Oh yeah, and having lunch,
right? And
like-
they're just sitting there.
And what's the one guy that I tried to get him as a guest on the show? He's from the Wakanda, not Wakanda. That's the whatever the people that did the wire climbing. And he went from one tower to
Right,
the other.
right.
I worked on getting him for one of the shows. Oh my God!
Yeah.
And there's nothing below you but
Just a long
cement.
pole.
Nothing.
You get that
Yeah,
long pole.
yeah.
You gotta
And if
balance.
someone goes, "Hey, a bird!" Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you.
All right, let's get to the end of this thing, shall we? For the record, Mark.
Well, there's a little-known coaching change that's being made. Apparently, Cornell is hiring a defensive coach from Stanford to be their new head coach, George Seifert. And for people who go, oh, yeah, the Niners coach. Well, you immediately would think he must have been a hit at Cornell. No, he went 3-15 at Cornell and got fired in November of '76.
Yeah, 2
So
years.
Right, which is the best thing. And then he went back to Stanford and teamed up with Bill Walsh, and then joined him with the Niners, and then replaced him in the Niners and won a couple Super Bowls. So it just shows you that it's not your first step in a journey that matters. It's more of like your last steps.
I think he could have felt when he got fired from Cornell, there has to be some sort of, you feel defeated.
Oh,
Like,
for
man,
sure.
the heck am I going to do now? And
Although
then
it's possible that he was like, and these kids suck.
Yeah, that's right.
I can't win
Give
in
me
the
the
Ivy
people that
League.
know how to play football.
I can't go against Harvard or Yale, man.
Yeah.
Right. Billy.
Okay, here we go. Chris Everett. Not the tennis player.
Oh, the horse. Yes.
She made her
How's
first,
she doing?
Well, she won her first start of 1975, the La Cañada Stakes. So she's back on.
Yes.
Yes.
I haven't heard that
I know.
name in a while.
I saw that and I thought, Chris Everett's back on the horse again.
Steve
Well, she's the
Bartkowski, Cal quarterback, taken as the first draft choice in the NFL by the Atlanta Falcons and represented by his good friend and college roommate Lee Steinberg, who we had on about this time last year,
right.
talking about that first client that
Lee's
Mr.
great.
Steinberg had. So, but Billy, that was quite a draft
I
for
know.
another Pac-8 team.
That's right. Southern California, USC, had 14 players picked in the draft, the most of any team in the draft. And some notables. Anthony Davis, the second round by the Jets. We all know Anthony Davis.
we had him on the
We
show.
had him on twice.
Pat
Two
Hayden
different
was
shows,
picked
yeah.
in the 7th round by the Rams. And then J.K. McKay was picked in the 16th round by the Browns. Another.
Guest of the show.
Yep.
Think of that. You get drafted by this in the 16th round, which they don't
Which
even
don't
have
do
anymore.
yeah.
But J.K. ended up playing in the NFL
He
for a
did.
few years with his dad
He did.
in Tampa. And, oh, man, both him and A.D., great guests.
Weird to
Just
think he was
great.
picked in the 16th round, and didn't Tampa Bay lose their first,
26
games? Yeah.
26,
Yeah, darn, if
yeah.
it was 16, it would have worked better.
Mark, faces in the crowd.
Yeah, so this face in the crowd, I don't think he became a great athlete or anything. His name is Kevin Nagurski, and he was the captain leading scorer for the International Falls, which is a Minnesota high hockey team. He had 16 goals and 17 assists. But what makes him so remarkable is that his dad was NFL Hall of Famer Bronco Nagurski.
Yeah, there aren't many Nagurskis.
No, they're not. And, if you don't know who Bronco Nagurski is, he was also a wrestler. I think he made the Hall of Fame in 1951, but he was one of the great early stars of the NFL and stuff.
That's a tough name to have to be party. It's a tough name to live up to.
And a tough guy.
Yeah.
It just sound.
Yeah.
Is there a more tough sounding?
Nagurski.
Maybe Dick Butkus.
Right.
But Bronco Nagurski.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like an ice skater.
Yeah.
And he didn't play for Denver. He played for the Bears from 1930 to 37, and he was 6'2", 235 pounds, which was big in those days.
Yeah.
So he was, and he rushed, I think, for about 4,000 yards. But you got to remember, they played 10 games back then.
Right. 19th hole. Got to remember, we are a couple of weeks removed from the annual swimsuit edition, and so letters regarding Cheryl Teagues and the girls in that issue are coming in, and they're mostly like this. The cover is disgusting. Your bathing suit ads are disgraceful in a sports magazine. I am not a prude, but there is a time and a place for everything. This magazine is not the place.
You're a prude. Seriously. Yeah.
Right? Did you see any others that resemble something to that effect?
Why did it? the pro and con.
Yes.
Because David Snyder said, I remember Cheryl Teagues from last year's bathing suit preview. You should make her an annual feature. See?
Yes.
So there was people that did like it and people that did.
Right. Well, and David Thiel of McLean, Virginia says, kindly extend my subscription 10 years.
That's right.
So I think he liked it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot to like.
Go back and listen to the show with Curry Kirkpatrick about Cheryl Teagues and the swimsuit issue that was released on the 27th of January. I think you'll really like it. So, and we enjoyed Rogie Vachon, Hall of Fame goaltender for the Montreal Canadiens and the LA Kings. I won't mention that he played for the Red Wings and the Bruins as well. That's inconsequential. He's a king.
He's
To
king,
me, he will
man.
always be a king.
Save
Another
Vachon.
great guest on the Pop Podcast. We're done. That's it. Till next week. Mark, we're talking UCLA hoops next week. What else is new? We haven't
love
talked
it.
about them in a
I
while.
know. We gotta get back
haven't.
to it.
We haven't. It's the last glory days of John Wooden, so let's get pumped.
For
go,
Mark
Dave Myers.
and for Bill, I'm
Yay.
Scott, and we are past our prime.
And I want to have a special message from my cat Fluffy. I'm still here, still kicking. Watch I get home and find out she ran away.